Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The rain fell in heavy curtains over the cemetery, while stifled sobs mingled with the whisper of the wind. Everyone was there for her, the woman they thought was lost forever. Her husband, impassive, wore that icy smile she had learned to hate, the smile of the man who had betrayed her in the privacy of their bedroom, when she believed in their eternal love. The coffin opened, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Her eyes opened to the gray sky, the rain on her skin, and disbelief on the faces of her loved ones. Against all logic, against the coldness of death itself, she was coming back to life. An icy rage seized her, each heartbeat fueling a vengeance she had never dared to imagine. She watched her husband, her lips pressed tightly together, her hands trembling. Today was no longer about forgiveness. Today was about justice, and every smile he had thought cruel would turn against him. The world that had thought she was gone was about to discover that you cannot betray a woman's love without paying the price. She opened her eyes in her room, but it wasn't the cold, sterile hospital room where they'd pronounced her dead. It was her room, exactly as she'd left it, but everything felt different, as if the whole world was holding its breath. She stood up slowly, each step fueling the anger that burned inside her. Her husband, convinced that death had sealed her fate, was still outside, surrounded by friends and colleagues, celebrating what they believed to be her demise. He had no idea that the woman he had betrayed, humiliated, and deceived was alive and plotting her revenge. She began by silently and invisibly observing every detail of his daily life. The appointments, the habits, the secrets he thought he was keeping. Every smile he offered to another woman, every word he whispered behind her back, she recorded them, like a patient predator waiting for the moment to strike. But she didn't just want to see him fall. She wanted his fall to be perfect, relentless, for him to finally understand what he had destroyed within her. And for that, she had to be more cunning than ever. The first act of his revenge would be silent, invisible, but irresistible. And when the moment came, he would know that one never betrays a woman one believes lost, without paying the price. She didn't want to rush things. Revenge had to be an art, not a mere impulsive act. She observed her husband from a distance, noting every detail, every weakness. He boasted to his friends, speaking of his triumph over his supposedly dead wife. He laughed, carefree, unaware that the real game had just begun. Her first action was discreet but significant. She slowly sabotaged his reputation, an anonymous message here, a small, compromising detail there. Each piece of the puzzle she carefully placed shook his seemingly perfect world. Friends he believed to be loyal began to doubt him, business partners to distrust him. She remained in the shadows, invisible and ruthless, like the shadow of a storm about to break. But this was only the beginning. Every move her husband made, every word he uttered without suspicion, served her strategy. She took pleasure in seeing his smiles freeze, his gestures become hesitant. The throne he thought he occupied was crumbling, brick by brick, under the silent influence of the woman he had believed dead. And while he still believed himself to be in control, she was preparing the moment when he would finally understand that no betrayal, no lie, no deceit goes unpunished. She would return to his life in a dazzling display, and on that day, nothing of his arrogance would remain. Every smile from her husband became a weakness she exploited. She knew exactly how to strike where it would hurt most, his pride, his public image, his self-confidence. The rumors she had sown were beginning to spread, discreet but destructive. Business partners he had thought loyal were now wary, some even backing away from dubious deals he had previously dismissed as insignificant. But she wasn't content with simply ruining his external world. She infiltrated his personal life. The friends he courted, convinced they'd found the perfect man, were confronted with the truth she subtly revealed, exposing his lies and duplicity. Each confrontation, each silent revelation, increased her own power, and each day she regained a little more control of the situation. Then came the moment she had been waiting for, a grand reception where he would celebrate his posthumous success. The guests were numerous, the music resonated, and he strutted about, unaware that the woman he had betrayed was there, in the shadows, ready to strike at the exact moment. When she finally appeared, elegantly dressed, dignified and implacable, time seemed to stand still. All eyes turned to her. And in her eyes burned that icy flame he had never seen before. The world he thought untouched began to crumble before her gaze. He would come to understand, too late, that death had never been the end. And that betraying a woman who returned for revenge was the beginning of his own personal hell. The room was silent, broken only by the clinking of glasses and the murmurs of curious guests. She entered, each step echoing like a warning. Her husband, so self-assured just moments before, sensed a strange tension in the air. When he finally met her gaze, his arrogant smile froze. "You really thought you could get away with it?" she asked, her voice soft but icy. Each word was an invisible blade, cutting through the illusions he had built around himself. He stammered, searching for an excuse, a word to mask his fear, but she continued, calmly revealing each betrayal, each lie, each humiliation he had inflicted. The guests, incredulous, gradually realized the extent of his duplicity. The allies who had supported his charade averted their eyes, some shocked, others outraged. As he tried to protest, she made a subtle move, a simple phone call, and his affairs were immediately investigated. His business partners, now aware of his manipulations and lies, withdrew one after another. His perfect world was crumbling, and this time, there was no escape. She moved even closer, a cold smile on her lips. "You thought I was dead, but you never understood who you were dealing with." The husband, humiliated and devastated by the truth and the loss of everything he thought he possessed, had nothing left to say. She had regained control, and the price of her betrayal had just been paid in broad daylight. She left the room, leaving behind a man reduced to shame and solitude, and a clear message: you never betray the one who returns from death with vengeance in her heart. The days that followed were silent but powerful. The city, a discreet witness to its revenge, slowly recovered from the downfall of the man who had believed he could betray with impunity. As for the city itself, it sought neither glory nor further vengeance. Its triumph was complete in its restored dignity. She stood atop a hill, watching the sunrise, each ray illuminating a future she could finally choose. The woman betrayed, humiliated, and nearly lost had become a force no one could ignore. The scars of betrayal remained, but they had become marks of courage, resilience, and power. She smiled, free and whole, knowing that her life no longer depended on the cruelty of others, but on her own will. The past, with its pain and betrayals, was now nothing more than a lesson etched into her soul. She moved forward, invincible and aware of her worth. And somewhere in the city, the man who thought he could control everything was sinking into oblivion, a living example of what happens when you underestimate a woman ready to be reborn.